What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Straight Like That, the podcast hosted by me, Instagram's favorite half brown boy, Camille. First of all, I gotta give a little shout out to our sponsor, Rory Love and Company, little candle wax and room spray, homemade company over in New Orleans. Link in the bio to tap in. Great products, lovely little gift for Valentine's Day coming up. Today, I have a very, very legendary guest, Concord's very own, Europe's world traveler, Vicky Bruce. What's going on, Vicky Bruce? How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Let's get straight into it then. So basically, why soccer? How'd you get into the sport? Talk about from whenever.
Okay, so when I was growing up, I played soccer, tennis, basketball, baseball, and I did like a lot of water sports because my family has a place on the lake. And I just loved pretty much anything sports. And I think my favorite when I was growing up was actually basketball, but I'm on the smaller side, so I kind of knew like logistically that wouldn't work out in the future.
Mm,
And I really also loved tennis, but it was more of an individual sport. And I think my young self wanted the social side of a sport. And then baseball, I also really enjoyed, and I was on a boys' team until I was like 12 or 13. And I was starting to make, like state teams and stuff that was like really
mm,
cool in baseball, but they started kind of hinting at, you're a girl and you can't be doing this in college. So you're going to be taking a boy's spot. So we're
yeah.
not going to continue to pick you. So I kind of took that as like, okay, that's fine. I don't want to switch to softball. So then I just pretty much focused everything on soccer. And I have photos of when I'm like 4 years old, 5 years old. I always had a soccer ball near me at like all the field
Mm,
days. I loved playing it with all the counselors. And so I think somehow deep down that was my favorite of them all this whole
mm.
time. I just didn't really know it, but it also just worked out that all the other ones kind of fizzled out for whatever reason. And by the time I was about 14, I focused everything just on soccer.
Yeah, I was
So
just about to ask, like, what age were you when you really just focused on soccer only, and like, I guess how devoted to the game were you at that age?
I was very devoted so from a young age I was playing, at like the YMCA, and then
Mm,
I joined a girls team, and I ended up volunteer to go in goal at one point. And I guess I don't really remember this. My parents told me this, but I guess I didn't like it that much. So I was kind of
mm,
upset that I was still in goal all the time because I only offered to be nice. And I guess I was good at it. So they kept putting me there. And then I would cry after games. So my mom one game went to the coach and basically said, like, if you don't put her in the field, like we're leaving. So
yeah.
then so then they just took me and we left. And then I was crying and upset because I didn't have a soccer team anymore. But her boss at the time was the coach of a boys team. And he was like, oh, bring her to tryouts. We'll see how she does. And so I wasn't super technical, but I was like fast and strong and kind of big at my age at the time. So then I joined that team and played on that team for from when I was like 8 to 14.
Oh,
So
wow.
that came with like a whole ton of obstacles in itself because going through like puberty with all boys and I'm the only girl
Yeah, yeah.
is a very difficult kind of thing. But yeah, so I think it was when by the time I got to about 11 or 12, I had a coach that took over our men's team that wasn't like a parent. And that's kind of when my career took off because he took me
Yeah.
under his wing and made me like a very good football player, not just an athlete. And
Mm,
then I loved the game more, and I was much less in goal. I was more of a forward or a midfielder. And then from the time I was like 13, 14, 15, I was having private lessons with him because he had his own
oh,
soccer school
wow.
boot room. I don't know if that was before your time or not.
It might be. It might be.
Yeah, and then I was like in middle school, you're playing, your middle school soccer team, your middle school basketball team. So I would just after school have basketball practice, get in the car, have some chicken nuggets, go straight to soccer practice.
Yeah,
Go,
quick.
yeah, go home and then do
Hmm.
homework, go to bed, do it all over again. But by the time you get to high school, you really kind of have to focus on just one because you
Right.
don't have time for anything else. And I was
Right.
playing, for you, I'm not sure about you, but Cannon was about 45 minutes to an hour from my house. So
Yeah,
it was
that's
a long
wild.
way to get. It was a long way to get to high school every single day. And
Hmm.
then my soccer training was also like an hour and a half away when I joined a girls team. It was in Charlotte. So
Hmm.
it just didn't have much time for anything else.
Yeah, you're really just on the road and training and
Yeah,
sleeping, I guess. Wow.
pretty much homework, sleep, school. That's it.
So I guess when you were doing the one-on-one lessons and like really, spending a lot of time into training and stuff, that's when you wanted to go college? Was that like a goal of
Yeah.
yours?
Yeah, I think because I was always playing with boys, whenever I did soccer camps or training sessions and I got to be with girls, I always was playing with girls who were, 16, 17, 18, because I happened at the time, I was kind of at that level, even though I was younger. And
Hmm.
I just really loved being around them, looking up to them, hanging out with them. It was so nice to be around like comforting, inspiring women, and they all were going to play college. So I kind of knew that that was what I also wanted to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were playing in high school as well and playing club?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think it's the same for most states, but it might be different in like the UK for people watching there. But you
Yeah.
basically have your club season for the women was say like June, July until December, and then your high school season would start, and then you'd have like a high school season from
Hmm.
like February to May or June. So that way you're still playing soccer all year long, but it's like with kind of different teams throughout
Yeah.
the year. But I was very fortunate that the club team I was on was one of the best in the state. We won state cup almost every year that I played, which was really cool. And we
Yeah.
were ECNL, which I'm not sure if that's a thing anymore, but it was Elite Clubs National League. So we got to play other top clubs throughout the US. So like any given weekend, we'd go to New York or we'd go to Las Vegas or we'd go to California to play some of these other top clubs, which was a very cool experience.
Right, right. That's a lot of dedication though. There's a lot
Yeah.
of travel time and it's
Oh,
a lot of time away from family and whatnot. So that's at what, 15, 16 you're doing that?
yeah, that was
Okay.
14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I mean,
So
I
all
didn't,
throughout high school, basically.
yeah, I didn't have
Okay.
weekends ever. The only time I actually had a social life was when I tore all my ligaments in my knee and had to not play for a bit. I finally got to go to sleepovers. I got to have
Yeah.
dances. Like I got to do things I never could do because I was always so busy.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that injury then. So how old were you and what did you do exactly?
So I was 16, I think 16.
Hmm.
It was October and I was playing our like arch rival team in North Carolina, Castle. And was like a midfielder and we were down a goal and my friend Courtney was taking a free kick. I remember it perfectly. She
Yeah.
was taking a free kick and the ball was kind of looping in to the point of where like you needed to flick it in to try to get it over the goalie's head because she was coming out and I was going. So I extended my leg to try to chip it over her and she caught the ball, but also her whole body weight landed on my knee and pushed everything kind of down. So I
Ooh.
tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus, and crushed my tibia, and parts of it came off. So I was just screaming bloody murder for a solid 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
They rushed me to the hospital and had to get x-rays, and they couldn't do an MRI because I was so swollen. But through the
Hmm.
x-ray, they saw how much bone damage was done. And they said, like, for this to happen, you had to have torn pretty much everything in its path.
Wow.
So that was unfortunate. Yeah, so
So
that was
how'd
my
you?
sophomore year of high school, I think. Maybe
Okay.
my junior year, might have been my junior year.
Junior year? Okay.
Yeah.
So how'd you shake back from that? That sounds like it could end everything right there.
Yeah. They honestly thought it was a car crash. Like that's how bad it was.
Wow.
And they said I'd never play again. So just not get my hopes up. So I
Hmm.
was a bit down. They said even with like a good recovery, it would take 9+ months of constant rehab and physio. So I did do that, consistently 2 to 3 times a week for 9 to 12 months. And then I finally put my boots back on and it kind of made it all worth it. I definitely wasn't where I was pre-surgery. I don't think
Yeah.
it takes a long time to get back your athleticism, your fitness,
Hmm.
touches on the ball, all that kind of stuff. But I was just so happy to be back out there that I didn't care.
Yeah.
But then unfortunately, a few months after I finally came back, I just wasn't feeling, I felt like something was off. And I would look at myself in the mirror and I would kind of see bumps and things in my knee that just looked like it shouldn't be there. And so I went to the doctors again and they said, oh, you need another surgery because stuff has been growing around the plates and the
Damn.
holes were put
Yeah.
in. So then I had to have a second surgery senior year, a few months before I went to college. And that was frustrating because I'm going into like the biggest part of my career and
Right.
starting at a disadvantage. And at the time, I definitely didn't appreciate it for what it was. Like I was like, oh, it's no big deal. It's a minor surgery because compared to the one before that took 12 months to heal, this
Right.
was take like 8 to 12 weeks. But you don't realize how much going from every day to basically nothing and relearning how to walk
Hmm.
and relearning all these things. it takes a toll. So I went
Yeah.
into my freshman year of college not prepared as I should have been.
Did that did I guess both surgeries or like really the major injury affect like college recruiting?
Luckily for me, it didn't because when
Okay.
I was 14, I made the U14 national team. So I was kind of on college's radars since I was younger.
Right.
And I was also on the region team, which is like the best 18 players in the South. So it was like out
Mm,
of Florida, Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. I was like the best in North Carolina selected for that team. And I got to go to Germany, to Costa Rica, and just kind of represent like our region. And so I met a lot of people, a lot of coaches. My name was kind of out there. So when I got injured at 16, I had actually already committed to college, which is
okay.
not super common, but it was lucky for me. So
Hmm.
I was looking at Duke, Wake, Notre Dame, and UNC. And I visited all of them, spent the night, met all the girls, saw the facilities, the campus, and
Hmm.
I honestly loved all of them. It was an incredibly hard decision. What it came down to was that dream you have as like a little girl is to play for Carolina, is to wear that
Yeah.
blue and go where Mia Hamm went, go where Michael Jordan went.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kind of like took over me when I was, 15. I was like, that's what I
Hmm.
want. So I committed, I committed to Carolina my sophomore year and then got hurt several months later. And they just kind of checked in like, are you still okay? Can you still play?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'll be fine by then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of how that came about.
All right. So then you overcome two surgeries. You still have Chapel Hill there. You go over there, and how was basically your transition to freshman year? Obviously, you were saying it was rough because of the lack of consistent play.
Yeah, so I probably should have redshirted in hindsight. And for
Okay.
people in the UK, that means forfeiting your eligibility for that year to like kind of get yourself more prepared.
Hmm.
I definitely should have done that because my body wasn't ready for the intense reality that was football. And we were going from, when you're playing in high school and you're playing at your club level, it's all girls who are 17, 18. But when you go to college, if you're the young one, you're 18 and you could be playing with some 21, 22 year olds. So not
Yeah.
only do these girls have more experience, like football wise, their bodies are also bigger, more adapted,
Hmm.
stronger, because they've been training that much longer. So I definitely went in not as fit as I could have been. Um, but I did still have an amazing experience. I'm absolutely best friends with some of the girls I met my freshman year who I played with. Some of them are in NWSL in the American League. Some are also in
Hmm.
Europe like me. So I am grateful that I went there and had that experience. And then also to be in that competitive culture, I think it had it had very positive, I don't want to say repercussions, but it had a lot of positive aspects and also some negative aspects, and like combined it kind of really helps you see how much football means to you
Hmm.
and where you want to go with it. And yeah, I think just playing with the other greats, like everyone was pretty much the best from their state at that school. Like everyone was the bee's knees and
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
the person that was used to being the best. And then you get there and now you're in this pool of everyone was the best, but now you might be not that important anymore because you're young and other people are better than you. So
Right.
it was just definitely a wake up call and an adjustment. And I did it for 2 years, and I definitely think I improved. I learned so much about myself and about football, but in terms of playing in games, I wasn't getting much game time, and that was hard for me because I felt like I had sacrificed my whole life and trained
Hmm.
so hard to, see the fields, and I was performing at training. Everything was ranked there. So at the end of every practice, you would have a list of like 1 to 35, and everyone had a spot in which they were based on how many passes you made, based on how many goals you had, based on how fast you were in this
Oh
and that.
wow.
So it was just so scientific that I I liked it in some aspects because I was able to say like, oh, look, I'm third in this or I'm eighth in
Hmm.
that. And I could compare myself, which was really good. But at the same time, it got very mentally exhausting because if I was ever top half of the group, then I also wasn't getting game time, but people below or lower than me were. It's just really hard to understand, well, why is that happening? And
Right.
there's a lot of aspects of the game and like of coaches as to why they would pick someone to play. And like at the time I was just young and I was proving my worth and I didn't think I was getting rewarded for it. So I was just kind of frustrated and sad and just met with the coach and said, like, do you see this changing? I don't
Hmm.
mind staying if I'm going to get rewarded, next year or the year after that. But to his credit, he was incredibly honest and just said, I don't know that I see that changing, and we're getting even more talent the next 2 years. So if you wanted to go elsewhere, like, we completely support you. You deserve to be playing. You're a great player. So with that kind of nudge and encouragement, I said, okay, happiness is more important. I'm gonna go transfer to a school where I will be playing and I can be more of the,
Hmm.
core player, not just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
training every day for
Wow.
many minutes.
I've actually never heard anyone talk about how in training, at the end of training, they have like a ranking.
Yeah. It
That's
was
just a standard that Chapel Hill has.
Yeah, I mean, every day it was also like something as simple as 5v2, which is like a little game you play in warm
Yeah.
up. They had that rank. So if there was 30 players or 35 players, there's like 3 or 4 tiers of 5v2. And then in your tier, so you were either in the first group, second group, third group, fourth group, you would then go up and down between each practice based off of, out of those 7 people in a 5v2, whoever had the 3 people with the most passes were like the top 3. The 3 people with the least passes were like the bottom 3. And it also divided by how many times you were in the middle. So if you had 20 passes, but you were in the middle 10 times, that only averages 2 passes.
That
Um,
is crazy. I've
so
never
then,
heard something like
so it
that.
like worked in like a mathematical way that they'd have 3 people in one color, 3 people in another, and one person as the playmaker. So then after that, you then had a 3v3 plus 1. And based on how you did in that, 2 people would move down and 2 people would move up from each like level. And
Wow.
it was just stuff like that was every day. So if you were doing shooting drill, you knew that if you had 10 shots, every single manager on that field was going to know if you had like 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, and
Right.
also what other people had. You just couldn't hide from anything. So
Right.
it's really good in the sense that it pushes your boundaries, it pushes you to train on your weaknesses, and you can see where you are compared to everyone else. But it's also sometimes it takes away some of the fun maybe for you. Like maybe football is
Hmm.
just to get some energy released. Maybe it's to get a workout. Maybe it's to, do what you're good at and not feel so pressured to perform. So it was definitely gave me a little bit of anxiety
Yeah. No,
when I
that,
was
that that
there.
competition is high, man.
Yeah,
Every
it's
day
very high.
too.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
Wow.
still incredible experience, incredible culture. Like I'm happy I had that experience to then base
Hmm.
other things off of. But I don't I
Okay.
don't think that was where I was thriving per se.
Okay. So then you decided to transfer. What were the options? Transferring out.
So transferring out, if you might not know, if you are in a league, we were in the ACC. Um,
Hmm.
if you went to another team in that league, you'd have to forfeit a year of eligibility. So
Okay.
that meant I would be transferring as a junior and I wouldn't even be able to play in a game that whole first year. I would only then get games senior year. So I decided I didn't want that, even though I liked a lot of the schools that were in our conference.
Hmm.
And when I was speaking with my parents about it, they basically said, we know you love soccer, but your education's more important. So we're not letting you transfer to a school that's not like equivalent to UNC, because UNC Chapel Hill is a very academic school.
Right.
So then we kind of narrowed it down to schools like Davidson College, American, Georgetown, like that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
William and Mary. And so I visited a couple of those. And after visiting, I just fell in love with Davidson. I knew that was where I should be. And
Hmm.
that was about 15 minutes, 10 minutes from my
Yeah,
house
close to
growing
home
up.
too, right?
So it just felt like extra home in that sense. So
Hmm.
I knew I'd be getting minutes soccer wise. I knew the location. I knew like everything what I was getting into. And I just fell in love.
Yeah. And how was your time over there in Davidson?
It was great. Yeah. I think Davidson allowed me to be, it was very liberal, not saying that UNC wasn't, but I think because UNC is so big, I was pretty much only ever with the soccer girls. Like we just clicked together. We had the similar lifestyle. It was just really great in that sense. But by
Hmm.
switching schools, there was less than 2,000 people in the entire university. Like at
Right.
Davidson, was less than 2,000. Chapel Hill, there was 40,000.
Hmm.
So everyone knew everyone on this campus. And my classes were like 20 people, 15 people. So you had a first name basis with the teachers. Whereas at
Right.
UC, I was like texting 2167 to make sure I'm in attendance because they have no idea who's there.
Right.
So it was just I learned better at Davidson, I think, because it was more like how I was taught all growing up. But then because it was so small, you were really able to make friends outside of the sporting world. You were able to just make connections and feel kind of free to be who you were.
Right.
So yeah, I'm forever grateful for Davidson in that sense. I feel like it opened me up to all the possibilities of what I could want to do in life, like what kind of person I want to be. I learned a lot about LGBTQ. I had no clue about that, and now I'm part of the community. Woo! So it's like I'm very appreciative of my time there.
Right. So really, it was just like an overall benefit to your life, like not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
soccer, just in life as well.
yeah. And the soccer, don't get me wrong, the soccer had aspects that were frustrating because it was kind of going from, like the epitome of competitiveness and an
Right.
amazing soccer school to a school that it was still Division 1. It was still good
Hmm.
soccer, but they highly emphasized academics over athletics, which
Hmm.
is totally fine because that makes perfect sense. But for me at that time growing up, I had only ever really put sport ahead of my academics. So it was definitely an adjustment for me in that sense.
Yeah.
And then to go from, winning every game to now tying or losing or really fighting for wins, it was just a totally different vibe. Um, but I mean, I still loved it. And
Yeah.
because I was playing like every minute of every game, essentially, I grew to love the sport again, which I think I kind of missed out on by being at UNC because I wasn't really having an impact. I was just kind of training.
Yeah. 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 Wow. So while I guess what your senior year at Davidson, um, were you thinking of pro? Were you thinking of, just going into some workforce or whatever?
To be honest, I hadn't given it much thought. I was so focused on like with transfer credits and stuff. I
Hmm.
had to take 14 of my 16 classes at Davidson had to be the major I was taking, which was sociology. So I was
Hmm.
just so focused on like graduating. I wasn't thinking
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
after the fact. But when I also didn't know about like the draft and how that worked because I feel like if I was at UNC, that's a totally common path. Lots
Right.
of people do that. It's just natural in almost every sport because they're so sport focused and have so many amazing athletes. And at Davidson,
Right.
we also have great athletes, but I think we were more known for our basketball team than anything else. So I
Yeah.
didn't even know it was a possibility really. So I just kind of graduated like a normal
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
person at college and was just happy I graduated, had good grades. And then that summer I was like, oh, I don't want to stop playing. So I decided to join a like a semi-professional team and I was the captain of that and scored some goals, had some great fun some summer memories. So I was like, oh, I don't want to stop this. Like this is really fun.
And
But
this is in Charlotte?
yeah, this was
Okay.
I played for Lake Norman
Okay.
Eclipse. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think they're a thing anymore. I think they're now Charlotte Independence, maybe.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, so I did a semi-professional thing, and then it just so happened when I was grabbing coffee with one of my friends, totally out of the blue, I had just said, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I want to play soccer. I don't know how. And she's like, oh, well, my boyfriend is from Scotland, and he might be able to get you something in Scotland. And I was like, oh, let's make that happen.
Yeah.
So in a few weeks, then I got on a plane and I went to play for the Rangers in Glasgow. So that was pretty incredible. But that
How did
wasn't.
that happen? How did you like,
It
that
was. It
connection
was
really work?
Yeah, I don't know if he worked there or he had friends there. Scotland's like a smaller country, so he just kind of knew
Yeah.
some people in the football world. He also played, sorry, I keep interchanging soccer and football.
It's okay.
But
You hit in both countries, so it's all right.
yeah. So yeah, he just had connections and I sent over like a highlight clip of some college games or
Hmm.
some high school stuff and then I guess the coach liked what they saw and at that point this is a long time ago it wasn't even fully professional so they were like oh we can't really offer you anything but if you come like we'd love to have you so I was like oh you know what I don't know what I'm doing I might as well like so I stayed at a local university that was really cheap housing and then I played on this team um and I had a really good time because it was like an experience unlike any other but I
Right.
actually needed a third surgery while I was there so I was struggling mentally and physically because I was in so much pain that I wasn't able to play to my ability and I didn't have access to like a car and some other things. So it just was really
Mm.
tough. But after the 2 or 3 months I was there, I came back, had my third knee surgery, and then rehabbed that for 6 or so months. And then
Man.
another totally out of the blue thing ended up happening when I was rehabbing and I was deciding, okay, like I still think I want to play, but I don't know how. And I've just had a surgery. Are people going to want me?
Hmm.
Walking my brother's dog in Seattle, Washington, completely random. And I was just texting one of my friends from college saying like, hey, how are you? I miss you. And she was living in Iceland at the time and was like, I'm actually miserable. Like I'm heartbroken over this relationship that didn't work out. I'm living in Iceland and it's amazing, but I don't have many friends. I'm playing soccer here, but like it's just missing something. And I was like, oh, that stinks. Like, I'm so sorry. Anything I can do to
Right.
help? She's like, well, yeah, you could come. And I'm like, well, I don't think I can just
Yeah,
oh, I can just come. She's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
no, really, you could. Let me talk to my coach. And I was like, well, okay. So then she spoke to her coach, and it became a thing that I have a British passport, which I guess at that time I didn't know was a big deal, but it is a big deal
Hmm.
because teams in Europe often have quotas of how many foreigners they're allowed to have.
Right. The
And so
international
with the
roster
British
spots.
passport, yeah, with the British passport, it was basically like getting an American player for free.
Right,
So
right,
they were like, oh, well, if you just had surgery, like, are you able to play? Like, what can you do? So I had to send some videos of myself, like jumping and sprinting and proving that I was physically fit.
right.
And in a few weeks, I was on a plane to Iceland, and me and one of my best friends from college, we lived together and we played in Iceland for like 4 or 5 months, traveled the country, living the dream. So that was my first like
Wow.
professional contract.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I loved it.
So how did you, I guess, did you stay there after your one season there
So
or?
Scandinavian countries, it's so cold that the season
Yeah.
is typically like February, March to October, November. Whereas like in England, it's pretty much July to June or July to May. It's like a full year.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so when I was there, my roommate slash best friend told me about how she has an agent, and I was like, "Oh, that's fancy. Are we supposed to have those?" She's like, "Yeah, I
So
think
you
it'd
were
be really
playing
good."
at this point with no agent. Like you were
Yeah,
just kind of just
I had no
contacting
idea how
friends.
anything worked. I was just learning
Wow.
one gig at a time.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So she was like, "Oh, well, like I have this agent. Do you want me to get you in touch with my agent?" And I was like, "Sure, that sounds great." So
Right.
I got in touch with her agent. We exchanged some messages. We enjoyed our time. So I was like, "Oh, would you mind representing me?" And he's like, "Of course, that sounds great." So then I had some other friends who were like, "Oh, I've played here. I've played here. You should try this. You should try that." And one of my other really good friends, these are both friends from UNC, ironically.
Yeah.
One was like, "Oh, I played in Cyprus and I loved it because I got to do Champions League." And I was like, "Whoa, what's that?"
Wow. That's a
So then I learned about, what Champions League was and what that meant. So then I kind of
Mhm.
pushed on my agent, "Oh, like I think I would like Cyprus because one of my best friends told me about it." So then
Mhm.
I signed a contract with Apollon Ladies, a Champions League team in Cyprus. I did that for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. So after Iceland, I went there and did that for a bit. Yeah. So
Wow. So you make this move to Cyprus. Talk about that life over there in Cyprus playing Champions League. Also like explain what I guess Champions League ball is to people who may not know what it is.
So Cyprus was incredibly beautiful. It was very
Yeah.
warm, a lot of perks in terms of off the field.
Hmm.
It wasn't super organized in the sense that the Cypriot Greek culture didn't really, mm, I wouldn't say they disrespected women, but they weren't kind of with the changing times of females playing sports and playing soccer at a level that's actually professional.
Hmm.
So it was just kind of slightly hard in that sense. But yeah, the country was beautiful. The team was good. The girls were nice. We had a lot of foreigners. Even the managers and coaches, they all spoke English for the most part. So that was great. There wasn't many barriers in that sense.
Okay.
I signed because unfortunately I just didn't know that much about Champions League and how stuff worked. So I signed thinking we had already qualified. But at the time, you actually, in order to qualify for Champions League in that league, you have to win the league.
Okay.
So I came in like the winter window and we were in, say first or second place. And I just thought, oh, it's fine, we'll win and then we'll qualify. And in that year, we ended up coming in second, not winning the league. So I was under contract, not playing Champions League for the next season,
Okay.
like the whole full
Yeah.
year of just playing Cyprus teams. So I was disappointed with that. And I also didn't know that you could maybe, get out of contracts if you weren't happy or if you didn't want that. I just kind of was like, oh, I signed, I'm staying.
Right.
I was just very new to it all and just kind of decided like, oh, the country's nice and I'm playing, so let me just stay.
Hmm.
Then what ended up happening was that whole season, we ended up coming in first. In the very last game of the season, we got a goal in the 90th minute and,
No
won the
way.
game 2-1. And that made us win the league. So I was on such a high from that game in that moment that I was like, I want to stay now that we have qualified for Champions League, which is, sorry, I didn't explain it. That's playing
That's okay.
essentially all the other top teams from each country is essentially what it is, depending on the level of the country. So say England has 3 spots for Champions League because English football is so good.
Right.
Cyprus had 1, so it was the top team won. Denmark has 2, that kind of stuff. It just depends. Germany, I think, has 3. So it just depends on the country. But
Hmm.
I felt like, okay, I've been with this team for, over a year and a half now, and I was a part of getting us to qualify for this amazing thing. And that was why I came here in the first place. So, I'll stay. So I stayed another month or so. In my contract, I just had that whenever we got knocked out of Champions League, then I would part ways. And unfortunately, we lost to the top team in Portugal. They're called Braga. We lost to them 1-0. And so even though we beat the team in Latvia like 6-2 and won our other game like against a team in Austria like 10-0, something like that.
Damn.
Yeah, or maybe it was Latvia. I think we won 9-0, 8-0, and then the Austrian team we won like 6-2. But because we lost that one game, it was like a group scenario. The Portugal team ended up advancing to the next round while we got disqualified. So
Oh
my
wow.
Champions League story was kind of cut short, and I was a bit disappointed by that because I also at the time thought if you qualified, you automatically would be playing these teams like Barcelona and Chelsea and all that. When in
Right.
reality, like making the group stage is very different than making the round of 32, the round of 16, the round of 8.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it was just another thing I didn't even know about. And in hindsight, I wish I had.
So those
But
big teams over there, they automatically qualify, like they don't even have a
yeah,
group
a lot
stage.
of it goes off of like points that you've had throughout the years, decades, whatever. So your Chelsea
Mm.
is so good and so well respected. They don't even come in the tournament until later on. They don't have to do like
Wow.
group play stuff. And this was at the time. They might have, I think they've changed how it works now.
Okay.
But at the time, that's how it was.
Hmm.
And so I was just kind of disappointed that we got knocked out. But at the same time, my cousin was getting married. So I had stuff to go home to. So I was excited to be a part of some of that.
Right.
Then I, had an agent at the time. I ended up switching agencies while I was over there. And this new agent got me a gig in Sweden for a few months. So I just took that because he basically said it wouldn't look good on my soccer resume if I didn't
Yeah.
have something from like August to December. So I went to Sweden and it was definitely a different experience because I was playing forward, which I don't usually do. So that was
Okay.
nice. Um,
What is your primary position then?
Currently I'm a center back, but
Okay.
in Iceland, in Scotland, Iceland, and um, Cyprus, I was playing center mid. I was
Okay.
more of like a holding mid or outside mid or attacking mid, that kind of role.
Hmm.
So then in Sweden, when I went to outside forward, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then my
Hmm.
first game there, I scored a bicycle goal, and I was like, this is the
Damn.
coolest thing ever. I don't even know how it sounds way cooler than it was. It just so happened that it was a bicycle. um,
Nah, that's sick. Gas yourself. That's a goal.
so yeah, so that was fun. It was nice to like experience something different, to be like
Mhm.
on an attacking person instead. And but it was very cold, incredibly small town, about 8 hours north of Stockholm. So it was like people walked everywhere, had bikes, like that was the vibe, and
Yeah.
everyone loved each other. It was very like homey.
Yeah.
Uh, and then that ended in I think like October-ish. So then I decided, you know what? No, like the windows in which you can transfer aren't until January anyway. So like, why don't I take advantage of this time that I have off from football for the next few months? So I decided to go backpacking through Europe. So I visited
Oh
a bunch of
wow.
places in Belgium, Germany, Norway, and kind of saw friends in various cities and just made a trip of it. It was really nice. And
Yeah.
then got to be home with family for the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And then my agent at the time got me a trial with a team in Denmark. And he was pushing that because he's like, they're very highly respected, highly regarded. They're fully women's program. and there's a like very high likelihood that they'll play Champions League. And I was like, oh, this is my chance
Oh
to
yeah,
get
that's major.
in, like because I didn't do what I wanted to do in Champions League last time. So then I moved to Denmark and played there for a year and a half. So I made the team when I went on trial and
Right.
absolutely loved it. Loved the culture, loved the girls, loved the facilities. The weather I could have, done without. It was a bit cold, windy, and
Right.
rainy. But it was an incredible experience. My first 6 months there, we actually had COVID, which was quite terrible, but we were the only league in the whole world that managed to have a season during COVID. So we were just tested every day for God knows how long. But we, instead of playing each team twice in the second half of the season, we played each team once, and we ended up coming in first place. So we got to qualify for Champions League. So then in the fall, we had our normal season, testing every day just to be extra safe because COVID was still pretty prevalent around the world.
Yeah. This is fall 2020 or fall 2021?
This is fall 2020.
Okay, so really like peak COVID.
Yeah. Okay. So then we, like, any given weekend, a game might be canceled because of COVID.
Right.
But that's when we had qualified for Champions League. So we played the round of 32. And so this team was had so many points from like being in Champions League previously. We didn't have to do that group play of playing the other teams. We were automatically in the round of 32. So we drew I think it was a Slovenian team. So we had to play the Slovenian team once at home, once away. So we flew to Slovenia midweek, and it was snowing there, and that was just a crazy game. We ended up winning 3-0, so it kind of took the pressure off for when we had our home game.
Right.
I think we won 3-2 or lost 3-2, but it didn't matter because the goals added up. Yeah, well, we won and advanced to the next round. And then the next round is when we drew Barcelona, which was probably the coolest thing I'll like ever experience in my life. So I'm very happy I was there. So I got to play Barcelona at Barcelona, and then once at home. We lost both times, pretty big, but the experience was honestly so amazing. It was just very cool.
How was it playing over there in Barcelona, Camp Nou?
I had never been to Spain, and I really wanted to go ever since I saw the Cheetah Girls 2 movie, because they just they dance all over Spain and make it look amazing. And I was like, oh my God. So I was just so excited for that. But of course, we didn't really like sightsee. You were there, for your job. You just went to the hotel, got to see business trip. Yeah. I did buy like a Spanish magazine, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll learn Spanish. So I actually, because I went and didn't get to do touristy things, in a few months, I'm going to go back to Spain with some of my best friends from high school, and we're going to tour, visit around, just so I can actually see it. It was such an incredible experience, and playing against some of the people that I like looked up to and followed on Instagram, and they are on the national teams, and I'm like, oh, I tackled her, like, oh, I stopped her from scoring. It lives in my head rent free.
Yeah, that's a crazy experience. Was that probably your best opponent you've played against?
Yeah, I think so, because they actually won Champions League that year, so they were the best in essentially Europe, but I would argue the world. They were just amazing. They were so technically good, every single one of those players, and I think they had the Ballon d'Or winner on the team that year. I mean, they're just a very good team.
Wow, that's great. That's a great experience. Oh man, Camp Nou too. I bet. How was it? Were they allowing like fans in, or?
No, we didn't have any fans. It wasn't
So it was
allowed.
completely empty stadium?
Yeah.
Damn,
And
okay.
I don't know if it was Camp Nou because it was the women's stadium, but it was right. We saw all the men's facilities. It was right there. It's
Okay.
campus kind of thing. So we were like walking around on our team walk, like, oh, is Messi gonna be over there? Trying to see if we could, find anyone.
Yeah. So this is what, peak COVID, you're in Denmark. So how'd you make a move to Bristol? Was there like another stop in between Denmark, Bristol?
Yeah, so my contract ended in the summer. It was about a year and a half. I started in January and ended in like June, July of 2021. From that point, I was like, okay, I've done Champions League and I've played this amazing, I got to play against Barcelona. I really like this culture in this country, but is there a way for me to get to a league that has a slightly higher competitive game on the weekends, like the actual league?
Yeah.
I had switched agencies again, just complicated. But this new agent had some connections in Germany with the Bundesliga. And I was like,
Okay.
oh my, that's amazing. Cause that would be like playing your Barcelona every weekend. You play Wolfsburg, you play Bayern, you play Frankfurt.
Mhm.
So I was really intrigued by that. And one of my really good friends from UNC, so this is now my third UNC connection, she was playing there in Germany. So I was able to message her, ask how she liked it, you know, what it was like, get all the
Mhm.
details. And I basically decided, you know what, it can't be that bad because you're there. So like worst case scenario, even if I'm, you know, not a huge fan, I'll have one of my good friends. And that's typically what makes me happy off the field. So I went and had a pretty good experience there. I was there for a year. I had my own apartment. I had my own car. So that was really nice in the sense that not every place does that. So I
Mhm.
was like paying a lot of bills and stuff. And so I wasn't coming away with that much money, but it was nice to have independence and freedom and
Right. Better quality of life.
yeah, and then I was
Yeah.
playing, you know, great opponents every single week and training with great girls. And we had a lot of foreigners on that team, which was also really good. So we had like a Thanksgiving, you know, we had like more American things because there was a lot of us.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that was a good experience. We ended up getting relegated. So after my season, they were going to be playing in the second league Bundesliga.
Right.
And I didn't think that I had an amazing enough time there to want to stay for the second division. So I
Mhm.
had made the decision with my agent, is there somewhere else I can go? He's like, well, what are your goals? What are your ambitions? And I've always said I'd love to play in America if I could. I'd love to play in England if
Mhm.
I could. And I'd really love to play for the Scotland national team because my grandparents are from Scotland. So I'm eligible
Okay.
for that. And he basically said, you know, if you're trying to play for Scotland, it's good to be in the UK. I'm like, oh, okay, well, like, what does that look like? You know, I've already played in Scotland, so I don't know that I want to play there again. And he was like, well, what
Right.
about England? So I was just saying, yeah, that would be amazing. And then that's kind of how Bristol City came about. So
Okay.
I had a different UNC teammate who played here last year. And I messaged her and just kind of asked, you know, everything from what are the girls like, what are the coaches like, facilities, and she absolutely praised everything about this place and
Mhm.
got me really excited. So within like a day or so, I said yes, I'd love to come, signed a contract, and was good to go. So now I've been here ever
Wow.
since.
Wow. So I guess what are your aspirations while at Bristol? I mean, you talked about how you wanna play on the Scottish national team. So I guess goals while at Bristol, I guess individual and team wise for you.
Yeah, so individual wise, obviously I'd love to make the Scottish national team. And
Hmm.
I knew even in the second division of England that the quality of football is so good. It's very competitive. And I
Hmm.
also knew that playing and one of the top teams in the second division could be just as good as playing like in one of the lower teams of the first division. And
Right.
I'd much rather get playing time and just be like an important core part of the team and kind of see how it works in England just to kind of get a feel for it. And I also knew like, okay, we have the FA Cup, we have the Conti Cup, where there's going to be times when we can play some of those WSL teams.
Hmm.
And that's maybe when I'll get to show my stuff and get to like have another Barcelona experience.
Hmm.
So that was kind of what I was looking forward to the most. And a girl on my team also plays for Scotland. So I thought, oh, that'd be cool to have another connection.
Hmm.
And then I figured why not just win the league? You know,
Yeah.
like
Well,
if you want to play,
of
if you
course.
want to play in the WSL, like if we win the league, we get promoted. So that
Okay.
was kind of like that was kind of the team goal, and also my goal with my agent was like, oh, like if you sign 1 year and you love it, and you get promoted, it's like a win-win. I was like, yeah, of
Hmm.
course it is. That sounds amazing. Like,
Hmm.
and then you're a part of the program that you helped achieve this amazing goal, and then you
Right.
get to stay with it and be a part of it as they now do the next thing. And then so
Right.
like we get promoted, that would be amazing. And then maybe the first year, maybe it's just to like, not get relegated. And then the second year it's to be mid-table. And then, so then you're just working slightly to keep advancing.
So you got some long-term goals with Bristol.
I do like it here. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean,
what's life like over
never,
there?
you never know what's going to happen, but I do like it. It
Yeah.
is right. Well, my situation now is I live with two other girls on the team. We have a nice house. I'm sitting in the living room right now with the fire on. It's nice.
Okay.
The girls are all incredibly nice. I am the oldest, so that's a bit difficult for me because I'm used to being one of the younger ones or middle pack. And now I'm just playing with some girls who are like 17 or 18, and I'm like, oh my God, you're a little
Oh,
baby.
wow. Yeah.
Learn. And I'm just find myself also jealous of them times because I'm like, oh, I'd kill to have your athletic platform, or I'd like to be your age and not have to be sitting in a school desk, from
Right.
7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Like, you're allowed to be at work, you're allowed to be here. And then, like, your school comes second. Like, oh, your teachers are just like, yeah, just get it in when you get it in, or you work remotely. Now that COVID has happened, people do
Right.
Zoom and online classes. And so it's just a whole nother world over here. They're so in love with football. Like, I walk down the street and someone might recognize me. And we have
Yeah.
fans games, and people are like, oh, like they know that the Bristol women are just as important as the Bristol men, which in other places I've been, that would not have been the case. We've got one head coach, like assistants. We've got like a analysis person. We've got a goalkeeper coach. We've got someone who does the sports science behind all of our running and tracks our data. We have like a conditioning and strengthening coach. We've got multiple physios. We have like a therapist, sort of. We've got a nutritionist. We just have so many psychologists.
Yeah.
We so much, like, so many resources here to be
That's
able
a
to
real professional environment then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like they're helping us be the best that we can be. And also we are very fortunate enough to share the men's facility. So they just had a new facility built like within the last year.
Okay.
And it's got, like, say 10 training fields. It's got, ice bath, cryotherapy, hot tubs, a big gym, and we have a cafeteria, so we get food every day. So like after training, we go up and we have lunch, and it's all catered to how many carbs we need to perform, and like all this kind of stuff. So it's just,
Oh, wow.
it's incredibly organized and well done, and it's just really nice.
Wow. And how are you guys doing in the league right now? Where y'all in the table?
We are currently in second, but we
Okay.
have to make up 2 games.
Okay.
Everyone has to make up a game because the Queen died. So RIP Queen.
Rest her
So
soul.
that the game that weekend had to be rescheduled. But we had another one recently where the pitches were frozen because it's been so cold overnight. And that's kind of frustrating, is in our league, the fields aren't necessarily heated, or we have a cover on our field because we kind of share the men's stuff, but other people don't. So if it's cold, you just can't play.
Right.
And then there's rules about, how many, like in the stands in the stadium, what it's got to be like to allow people to watch. You can't just play on, some random field in the corner if it's turf.
Right.
So that's been a bit frustrating, but other than that, and that's not in, anyone's control really. It's the weather. So you can't.
It's just time of the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it really, you have to win the league to get promoted, or can you be in second and go?
No, unfortunately, England is just one up, one down, which
Oh,
is
wow.
the first country I've ever experienced where that is the case. Usually it's 2.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into these questions that I put on the Instagram page. I don't know like what you do exactly in Bristol, but you are heavily loved because the amount of questions I kind of screenshotted like the notifications of it. I have 4 of them and probably about like 30 to 35 questions or just comments. And majority of them are people from over there, fans, whatever. So let's see. I got a couple of questions. Let's see. One is there any significance behind the number 14?
There is. When I was growing up, I was always the number 14. And then I switched to a girls team and couldn't be 14. So I was like, oh, I think I want to keep the 4. So then I was number 24, and then I was 24 for a bit. And then I went to college and I wanted to be 14. I couldn't be 14. I wanted to be 24. My roommate took 24. So I thought, oh, well, let me just keep the 4. Let's do 44. And they're like, sorry, that's also taken. I was like, well, what about 54? Like, sorry, that's taken. I was like, oh, what about 64? So then I got 64. And that's actually why my username on all my Instagram, TikTok, everything is Tricky Vicky 64 for that. So then when I started playing professionally, I tried to get back to the 14, the 24, the 4, anything that had the 4 in it. So when I came here, I couldn't be 24 or 4, but I could be 14, and I was very excited because when I was growing up, I also loved High School Musical, and Troy Bolton was number 14.
Oh my God!
It just fit. It just all makes sense because I love.
It just came full circle then.
It just worked. Like, I mean, Troy Bolton is life. So.
Oh, that's hilarious. Wow. All right. Well, shout out Zach Efron for the inspiration for the 14. Let's see. Favorite country you've played in?
Mm, that's tough because there's so much that goes on, not just like on the field. It's
Right.
also life off the field. I think I had the most fun living in Iceland because
Okay.
it was great football. It was one of my first experiences abroad. I was living with one of my best friends from college. We had a bunch of other Americans, and the country is just insanely unique. Like you go on a drive and you're in the middle of the Northern Lights. I mean,
Hmm.
you go for a walk and there's like glaciers next to you. Like it's just unreal. It was such a cool place.
Yeah,
So
no, it looks like it too.
yeah, I think Iceland is my favorite.
Okay. Let's see. So not a question, but you are an inspiration. Oh, Vicky, you doing things over in Bristol. Wow. Hardest opponent you faced thus far?
Um, Barcelona was obviously very good, but we did play
Yeah.
Man City last week, and they were also very good, very talented. And I think because I had recently been so invested in the Euros since coming here, and the
Hmm.
England women won the Euros. It
Right.
was really cool to be able to play Man City and play some of the girls who won with England like just a few months ago. So
Hmm.
I'd say that was definitely a top team I've played.
Okay. Let's see. How old were you when you got your first contract?
Let's see. So when I was playing in Scotland, I don't know that I would have considered that like a contract really. And then I
Hmm.
had surgery, which kind of delayed it. But I think that means I was about 23 when I first went to
You
Iceland.
got your first one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and now I'm almost 29. So I've been doing this for quite a while.
For a while, yeah. You bring that veteran leadership, huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's end on this one then. Favorite thing about Bristol?
Ooh. Oh, that's tough. Are we talking about the team or the city?
We could do that. Let's do like a couple of things about the team, a couple of things about the city.
Team, I do really like enjoy the girls. They're British humor is very different than American humor, but we still manage to get on and have a good laugh, and everyone's
Hmm.
incredibly nice. And doesn't matter the age, we all kind of get along. But I also really love the fans. From the moment I got here, you know, they put up a North Carolina flag, they put up a USA flag. I come to games,
Wow.
and after the games, people say, you know, Vicky, come here, sign this, and Vicky, do that, and I'm like, oh, you know my name. So I just feel so honored and like privileged to be this important to someone because I'm used to people
Hmm.
not really caring about women's football. So it's
Yeah.
just really nice to feel valued and to be in a place that especially it's so organized, so professional that they just make us feel like prioritized and that this is our job, this is our duty, this is, you know, we just want to give you the platform and anything we can to make you a better athlete. And I'm just really grateful for
Yeah, no, you in a perfect environment, it sounds like. Bristol City love you, you love Bristol, it seems like.
that.
Yeah. Well, Vicky, that's it. I'm not going to bombard you with any more questions. We can go through the whole list, but that's going to take a lot of time. And I don't have Zoom Premium, so we can't do that.
Um, yeah,
But thank you for joining again. Thank you for sharing all your stories, the
you're welcome.
details, everything.
Thank you
I'm
so
sure
much for having me.
everyone that, no, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure everyone who's going to listen to this is going to appreciate, your story and probably track now what's going on with Bristol and hope for promotion and then more success going forward.
Yeah, let's hope so.